fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren. Heard on KCAA 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Now, today we're going to get into a certain segment of conspiracy, and we're going to talk about Qanon. And what is it? Do we need it? Who is it? And what's going on? Like, where's it come from, and who's buying into it? And we've got a researcher and an anonymous Qanon podcaster, and we'll call him Travis View. Thank you for joining us today, Trav.
Al, Joe, thank you so much for having me on.
So let's just start with that right out the gate. Qanon, what is it? Like, what does it mean? So for the people that don't know anything about it, or they've heard the name floating around, but they don't really get what this is, maybe give us a rundown on that.
Sure. Well, QAnon is an very elaborate sort of internet-based conspiracy theory. In fact, it's almost like a meta-conspiracy theory that connects almost every other conspiracy theory you might have heard of. And it basically purports that there's sort of an evil worldwide cabal of people who really control the world. They control all politicians, and they control the media, and they control so everything basically, like a lot of conspiracy theories posit, everything that we know in day-to-day life is just a lie. But this cabal has a foe in Donald Trump. Since Donald Trump was elected, he is doing battle with this evil worldwide cabal, and he's getting assistance from this entity in military intelligence called the Q Team. And Q Team is a group of unknown people who are helping Trump in the United States government, but Q Team isn't just doing this all in darkness. They believe that this Q Team, who is close to President Trump, is sort of communicating very subtly in coded messages through these posts on the image boards 4chan and 8chan. And so periodically, this entity known as Q will make a message, and they're usually very, very cryptic. And the QAnon community, the people who believe in this conspiracy theory, believe that they can sort of know what's really going on by decoding these posts, which they call Q drops. So it's basically, it's this idea that that this evil worldwide cabal is going to go down, any day now. And through decoding these Q drops, then we can know how and when and everything else that's secretly going on behind the scenes.
How does that work? But Donald Trump can't read.
Well, they actually it's also based on the assumption that Donald Trump is actually super hyper competent. He believes that that his running for election and helping take down the cabal was in the works for decades. This was all part of a grand, elaborate plan that Trump was in on.
So talk a little bit more about this globalist cabal that controls everything. Now, what I hear from some of the supporters of this conspiracy theory is that these are satanic child molesters, and they run a sex trafficking ring, and this is connected to the Pizzagate. Is that true?
That's definitely part of the theory as well. It was like Pizzagate was really a predecessor to QAnon. Well, Pizzagate posited that there was underground sort of sex trafficking and, child abuse and pedophilia being run out of like DC or this particular DC pizza parlor. QAnon thinks that it's sort of going on all over the world, and like almost everyone who's really powerful or wealthy or or famous in any sense is kind of in on it. They're kind of in on this sex trafficking. They believe that they use child abuse and pedophilia as a way to sort of blackmail powerful people to keep them so that the cabal can sort of like keep those people in line. And so the idea that there is a lot of hidden child abuse certainly plays into that as well.
So so these people, to believe that this is true, I mean, it's one thing to say, there's somebody named Q who's giving us secret messages. It's another thing to say that the world is such an evil place where, it's completely controlled by the most evil elements possible. Because it's not like saying, oh, we're controlled by rich people, or we're controlled by rich people who are mean, or controlled by rich people who are murderers. I mean, they've gone after the absolutely worst thing anyone could be. They're running a child sex traffic trade. I mean, it's pretty dark, right?
It is. It's not just that these people are, they're not merely sort of self-interested or selfish. They're not just the elite keeping regular people down. They are like active Satan worshipers. They actively do incredible harm to people. In fact, some even believe that they literally kill and sacrifice children in order to get adrenochrome, which is a real substance, but people in the QAnon community, and this is conspiracy theory existed prior to QAnon, but they kind of absorbed it, is the idea that this is a substance that gives the elites makes them high and sort of helps them reverse aging. So they literally believe that this evil elite cabal kills children for their blood, basically.
And is this linked into the idea of I know that there was a leak in some emails where it suggested that John Podesta, who's a Hillary Clinton confidant, was engaged in, he was having people over for spirit cooking. And the Q people took this to mean that they were going to do some sort of human sacrifice.
Yes. So the funny thing, about that also, this is another way in which sort of Pizzagate was sort of a predecessor to QAnon, because people who believed in Pizzagate thought that by sort of decoding certain code words or sort of messages in the Podesta emails, like pizza or hot dog or whatever, these sort of meant secret things, and they had to be decoded in order to be understood. One of them was spirit cooking, and this is sort of a funny story. The real spirit cooking dinner was a Kickstarter reward from performance artist Maria Abramovich, and she actually listed the spirit cooking dinner on her Kickstarter page. Sort of like she, and so it's sort of, I always thought it was kind of absurd to believe that this was a sort of satanic ritual, because she's not covering up very well if she's advertising it as a Kickstarter reward,
Yeah. So I guess if you're doing this satanic, child eating, you probably wouldn't put it on Kickstarter. But if you have the world view, I guess, where the entire world is just this, then I guess it would make sense then, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's this idea that something that they say a lot in the QAnon community is that symbolism will be their downfall. Where if they the idea that these satanic elites sort of signal to each other in these subtle ways, and they can't help it. This is sort of how they are able to sort of communicate both openly to each other, but secretly to most of the world. So there is a sort of idea that the evil satanic elites use a sort of a secret language that sort of most people can't pick up on.
So how many people do you find, when you follow this online, are actively following QAnon?
That's a that's a very difficult question. You know, I often speculate. So the biggest sort of QAnon subreddit on the Reddit platform had over 70,000 subscribers before it was shut down, and there are several sort of big sort of QAnon names that have tens of thousands of followers. And they're all very active. And if you do a Twitter audit, it shows that the majority of them aren't bots. So if I were to speculate, it would probably be, you know, somewhere at 100,000 or so. There just is not. Do not sort of take anything I say as anything more than sort of like speculation based upon very, very limited data. But it is a very, very active community. They're on several platforms. They're on 8chan, for example, where lots and lots of believers get together and make theories. They're on Twitter. There's lots and lots of people who regularly make YouTube videos to sort of show their decodes and sort of offer new theories for the community. So the honest answer is I have no idea how big the community is, but it is very, very active.
So, Travis, you referred to this conspiracy theory as sort of a meta-conspiracy theory, where people are attaching lots of different conspiracy theories together. So what are some of the sort of stranger things that you've seen attached into this?
Well, you know, one of the I think one of the most bizarre conspiracy theories, and this is something that sort of again kind of existed before, but it was sort of like sucked up by the or sort of absorbed by the QAnon community, is the idea that Hillary Clinton wanted to that she killed JFK Jr. in the 1999 plane crash off of in the Atlantic Ocean. So, of course, that's not true. It was thoroughly investigated. There was that 1999 plane crash that killed JFK Jr. was caused due to pilot error, but a lot of people believe that JFK Jr. wanted the New York Senate seat that Hillary was running for, and so evil Hillary Clinton went and actually killed him. But the interesting thing is that the QAnon community, they take it a step further. They say that Hillary Clinton only attempted to kill JFK Jr. in that plane crash, but in reality, he survived, and now he's currently working with Donald Trump in order to help take down the cabal.
So I guess the conspiracy theory that Clinton killed JFK Jr. isn't good enough. You have to develop a conspiracy theory. You have to take that as fact, and then take a conspiracy theory that builds off of that.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm really fascinated by the sort of, it's almost like a sect of QAnon, because actually the entity Q has been asked about this on 8chan directly. Some other anon on 8chan asked Q, is JFK Jr. alive? And Q said no, N-O period, which is very unusual. Usually Q speaks of these really cryptic phrases, or they use Socratic questions, leading questions to sort of draw people into an answer. So this is a direct denial of that element of the conspiracy theory. But this community who believes that JFK Jr. is alive and helping Donald Trump persists. They get together, they make these long videos sort of explaining about what they believe JFK Jr. is up to, and it is extremely bizarre. I can't describe anything else besides sort of like a total assault on reality. It's strange.
So why do you think they picked out JFK Jr.? Because that seems so obscure. It was 20 years ago that he passed.
Yeah.
So where do you think the fascination comes from? Is it just they're looking for things to connect to Clinton somehow, and this had some sort of loose connection, or?
You know, I have a lot of theories about why they're particularly enamored with JFK Jr. I think the first element is the fact that they're really attracted to conspiracy theorists generally are fascinated with JFK, They believe that he was taken out by the deep state, for example, and that JFK Jr. is sort of like that they were targeting JFK Jr. possibly for the same reasons. The other aspect is that they want a lot of QAnon people. It is sort of generally considered to be a far right conspiracy theory, but they have this vision that it's going to be a bipartisan movement. And so, since JFK Jr. was a Democrat, they have this idea that he's going to come back and he's going to sort of like help Donald Trump, the Republican, and sort of build this sort of like this bipartisan movement within the QAnon community.
So that's pretty interesting. I remember when this sort of broke out in the media last August, and it was because some Q supporters wore their Q shirts and memorabilia to a Trump rally in Florida. That's when the media really started to catch on, and there hadn't been any polling at that point. And I did a sort of a strange impromptu poll of Florida, and found that it wasn't that well liked. In fact, it was sort of poorly liked. But how Republicans and Democrats rated it didn't vary that much. Republicans liked it a little bit more than Democrats, but not much. And it made me think, there are actually high-profile left-leaning people that have gotten into this, like Roseanne Barr, for example.
That's true, yes.
And I think she was a socialist, but somehow a Trump supporter, and she was into the whole satanic sex ring thing. And she thought all that was going on and that Trump was somehow a champion fighting all this.
The thing is that it's a very sort of I guess I would have to describe it as sort of a populist movement, and in the sense that they think that the problem isn't any particular political party or any sort of either dominant political philosophy. They just sort of imagine that it's sort of the elites and sort of the entrenched establishment who's doing all these evil things. As an example, they despised, well, as sort of lots of other Republicans did. They despised John McCain while he was alive, and they also despised George H.W. Bush, because they sort of thought he was sort of CIA. He was a former CIA guy. They sort of just saw him as sort of the elite establishment who was part of this cabal.
Is it the case that they thought that George H.W. Bush, who passed away recently, that he was still alive and was actually arrested for his supposed running a child sex ring too?
Yes, in both the case of the passing of John McCain and George H.W. Bush, they thought that many in the QAnon community thought they didn't just pass away from brain cancer, which is not John McCain, or natural causes. They thought that they were actually executed for their crimes secretly, and the narrative that they usually posit is that they were sort of given the choice to be executed silently rather than it be revealed all of the evil things that they had truly done. Which, of course, I don't think they've really thought through what a dark and terrible vision this is of the justice system, where you can sort of be tried and executed for secret reasons. But this is sort of the explanation that they've been given.
It doesn't seem like the sort of justice that anyone would want. It seems like they're going from one dark reality, where you have really evil people running things, to another one where, we have the bad people and we just force execute them in darkness. Without any sort of trial or any sort of protections.
Yeah, it is. Again, it is really, really dark. But they sort of see it as a sort of a way to sort of counteract the secret evil things that have been doing that the evil cabal has been doing. Yeah, they are sometimes they even sort of they openly sort of dream as sort of like a military sort of martial law, at least temporarily, in order to sort of rid the government of all these evil people. They even sometimes fantasize about U.S. citizens being sent to Guantanamo Bay, the Guantanamo Bay, prison, which is, of course, absurd. This is, a U.S. citizen has never been a military detainee.
Yeah, so I guess there's this view that there's going to be these secret military tribunals where there's going to be mass executions of all of these members of the cabal without any sort of trial. So it seems like an extreme, view. But I guess does it build off this idea that they think that the whole Mueller investigation isn't what it seems to be? It's, to them, Mueller is really working for Trump, and his indictments are all going after the secret cabal. Is that the case?
Yes, it's funny thing is like they waffle sometimes on Mueller, but there is a large segment of the community who believes that he is secretly working for Trump, and he's only pretending to investigate Donald Trump and the people of Donald Trump's circle in order to basically gain the trust of Democrats and the liberal, what they call the mockingbird media. And the idea is that by tricking everyone, people who are liberals and on the left, in order to sort of trust and be invested in Mueller's findings, then they won't be able to reject them once he comes out and reveals that, Hillary Clinton and John Podesta and James Comey and all these people did these evil things.
So one question I have to ask is, what do we do about this? I mean, this became very big on 8chan and 4chan, but as you said, it really spread out. So you have this small army of dedicated followers who have set up other channels, to sort of decode all of these messages. Like, you can go onto YouTube, and there's so many people in this, I would call it a community. So I have to wonder, like, what can be done? Because it seems so dark, and it is potentially dangerous, right?
I mean, yes, there it is. There is some sense of danger. There's a case in which a man basically shut down the freeway near the Hoover Dam because he wanted President Trump to release the second Inspector General report, which doesn't exist because he thought it existed because he was a QAnon believer. There's another case in which someone who in Seattle, a man named Bucky Wolf, who really bought into QAnon, wound up killing his brother with a sword because as he told police that he believed that his brother was a lizard. So this is really a problem. The question as to what can be done about sort of these people who, by all appearances, seem to be detaching from reality, and in at least a couple of examples I have been sort of enacted violence, is that I really don't know. I mean, I wish I had a really more satisfactory answer for you, but I mean, I'm sure as well as you probably know better than most. But people who are deeply invested in a belief system or a cult, basically, can sort of withstand years and years of failed predictions and just shrug them off or rationalize them away in one way or another. And so they really do seem very invested and trapped in this completely absurd belief system. I wish I had an answer. I'm hoping someone smarter than me comes up with some way to sort of rehabilitate them back to sort of like normal, I guess, more sort of like a mainstream political discourse. But I just don't know.
So now, do we know who Q is, or who's behind this, or what kind of, is it a group? Is it one person?
It's, well, yeah. I mean, it is. The short answer is we really don't know for certain. A lot of the evidence that sort of I've seen is sort of it was sort of created initially. The first couple posts were created initially by basically this group of a small group of like social media hackers, basically. then it was picked up by a group that currently runs by a stream called Patriot Soapbox. There's a great NBC News article that sort of tracked down that the sort of individuals that seemed to be responsible for the rise of QAnon, and one of them is the person who founded the Patriot Soapbox live stream, and he goes by the name of Panthlanon or Coleman Rogers, and he seems to appear to post as Q a couple times, but it's possible that basically the password for the trip code, which is how you post as sort of a specific individual on these image boards, has sort of changed hands a few times. So there is some information on people who are sort of involved in sort of the real people behind Q, but who is currently posting as Q and how involved the Patriot Soapbox team and Coleman Rogers are right now is unknown.
So was there a natural need, and was Q sort of developed out of some sort of resistance or a fear, or is it something that was created to help? The Trump government or something like. I'm just trying to get to the origins of why they created this Q and started running with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of speculation that a lot of people who sort of bought and sort of long before QAnon, there were people who bought into this Pizzagate thinking that Hillary Clinton and maybe a lot of Democratic elites were involved in this horrifying child trafficking rings, and these children needed to be not only freed, but Hillary Clinton needed to be charged for these horrifying crimes. And then as time went on after Trump was elected, and people maybe Trump supporters and people who bought into Pizzagate specifically, sort of noticed that these children weren't being freed. Hillary Clinton wasn't being arrested for running a child trafficking ring, and it seemed like nothing was happening in that sort of this particular fantasy world, basically. And so QAnon, people sort of bought into QAnon in order to resolve that contradiction, and the idea that the reason why we're not seeing dozens of children being freed from this sex trafficking ring, and the reason we aren't seeing John Podesta or Hillary Clinton being arrested is because Donald Trump is doing a lot of behind-the-scenes secret work in order to make this happen, but it involves taking down this evil elite. And so there's this big dramatic story that sort of explains why what the sort of the Pizzagate believers thought was going to happen wasn't happening yet.
So there's a lot of failed predictions, right? It seems as though Q keeps coming out and saying this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and then when they don't, he's got to come out and tell his followers, you need to be more patient.
Yep.
Or something like trust the plan, and eventually it's going to happen. But it seems like nothing's happening.
Yeah, I mean, there really are a lot of examples of Q saying something specific is going to happen and just not happening. I mean, the one that I often return to is Q once said that November 11th, 2018 would be the day that would be a parade that the world wouldn't forget, and this would be the day the world knows truth. This is one of the few times that Q offered a very specific date, and of course nothing really happened then. And then there was another time where they said that the world would learn the truth in July, and of course that didn't happen. And they predicted a red October. They thought that all of these deep state cabal arrests would happen in October, and of course that didn't happen. And they shrug these off lots of different ways. And a common way is that Q says disinformation is necessary. what's really interesting is that whenever there's sort of like a failed prediction, it doesn't seem like things are going like they're supposed to, according to what Q was saying. They believe that this was actually necessary disinformation in order to trick the cabal, or to make them make a mistake, or to fool them in some sort of sense. And so they sort of buy this explanation that, well, that, this was basically Q was lying to us, but Q was lying to us for our own good. There was sort of a good, legitimate justification for the failed prediction, even if we don't realize what it is.
So it becomes sort of unfalsifiable, that there's no way to test if this is real or not, because whether the predictions are, whether they come true or not, they're always true. There's no way to say they're wrong. We see, if you go back, you can see religious cults who've done the same thing, where they say, oh, the world's going to end, next Tuesday, and then when it doesn't end, the preacher has to come out and say, well, your prayers saved us, or, God set a new date, or, God told me I'm not supposed to know the real date, so he's punishing us by not destroying the world. So we see these sort of strategies over and over again in other contexts, but it's interesting to see it here, in a way. I mean, would you categorize this as a cult? And is it different than a typical cult?
Yeah. I mean, it really strikes me as it is kind of like a cult. It's almost like a cargo cult in a way. They just sort of believe that if they can if they sort of know the secrets to this incredible prosperous time that's just around the corner. And if they believe hard enough, they can make it happen.
So I was going to say, what about the Hoover Dam incident? Like when that Matthew Wright was going out, and he said he was on a mission by Q. Isn't that something we have to be worried about?
Yeah. I mean, obviously there are people who take it too far. And there was even another incident in which a man who is currently in custody as an arson suspect for allegedly setting Comet Ping Pong on fire, which is the DC pizzeria who people believe was at the center of Pizzagate. And there was discovered that his parents' YouTube account posted a QAnon video. So technically his motive is unknown, but it looks like he may have had some QAnon influences as well. I mean the answer is, yes, there has been some really concerning incidents of violence or near violence, and I think that because these people are so detached from reality, that is a concern. But I think that like the majority of people of QAnon followers that I interact with, they really believe in they advocate nonviolence, and they think that they don't want to do anything. The interesting thing is, like, I often see a lot of these QAnon people, they really crave some sort of great change, a great sort of revolution. They almost want sort of a dramatic sort of French Revolution sort of style, but they don't want to actually have to, wheel out the guillotines and storm the Bastille themselves. They sort of imagine that Q team and sort of the military will take care of getting rid of all the aristocrats for them, basically.
So one thing that I'm reminded of throughout all this is that Oliver Stone's JFK. Because people look at this Q thing and they say, oh my God, that's sort of new. But if you go back to JFK, that movie, I mean, there you had pedophiles, you had an underground, it was an underground homosexual community, but Oliver Stone portrayed them as pedophiles. And they were working with pretty much everyone, every government agency at every level to kill and then cover up the assassination of JFK. So some of these ideas to me don't seem really new. They just seem rehashed, and designed to paint Trump in a much better light than what the mainstream media does.
Yeah. It's like, well, a lot of these sort of themes about QAnon, they aren't new. I think the interesting twist on this, to QAnon, I think my speculation about the reason why it's been so successful is that almost every sort of like major conspiracy theory, they posit a sort of a hyper competent villain, someone who there's these sort of these super evil, powerful people who are able to pull off these dramatic conspiracies and then cover them up perfectly so that, there's basically no real solid proof that they ever happened. They're super, super hyper competent. And then what QAnon does is that it pairs that hyper competent villain, who's the cabal, with a hyper competent hero who is Q Team and Trump and the White Hats. So they think that they're pulling off this counter conspiracy almost, because it is basically conspiracy, the idea that Trump and the White House are all secretly battling people. And so that sort of that dramatic conflict between these two basically super hyper competent organizations, I think is very appealing to a lot of people, and I think this is why it has taken off.
So what should we expect? I mean, we've seen a small number of people take violence, who believed in this. It's not necessarily the case that they wouldn't have done it anyway or wouldn't have done it based on some other conspiracy theory, but this, right. It's such a dark vision that we have to expect that, somebody's going to want to fight fire with fire. And I'm almost surprised that there isn't more. I mean, I've heard about, a group of armed men in the Arizona desert who are looking for these satanic sex traffickers.
Yes.
But it seems like we should expect more of this, right?
I mean, I'll say that I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I think that some people have even made parallels, drawing comparisons between QAnon and Shirikyo, the Japanese cult, which killed several people in basically a poison attack in a subway, and they're concerned that it might even escalate to that level. And so obviously, I do not know if it's going to get quite that dangerous and bad and deadly. But people who are stuck in the cult mindset are certainly capable of doing dangerous things, and it's something that we should watch out for. I'll say that.
Do you find that when we mention cult and QAnon, how do the people that are following it, are they split from relationships with their families just like a cult, or does everybody accept it?
The thing is that when you actually often see this more often when you get into sort of private Facebook groups. they don't admit this publicly quite as much. But for a lot of people in the QAnon community, they do openly confess that QAnon has caused them to sort of separate from their family. It's strained their relationships. It's because they're so absorbed in this dramatic battle that they think is going on, and they think that this is way more important than their personal sort of relationships. I mean, I almost see it as sort of a way that for a lot of people, it's pretty clear that it gives them a sense of purpose, in a way that perhaps their family life or their career or other religion or their lack thereof just isn't. And so it is cult-like in that sense as well, yeah.
So it's, a lot of times these conspiracy theories, you would think they would really make people miserable, because if you walked around all day saying, oh, our world is controlled by satanic child molesters, then that's a dark place to live. But it seems like this conspiracy theory sort of gives these people hope in some sense, in that, they think elites are up to the worst things imaginable, but they think that there's a way out, and that this Q thing is signaling sort of a brighter, better future.
That's true. It is funny whenever I ever ask people, at least I get QAnon people to sort of entertain the possibility that QAnon is false. It's never they only seem capable of entertaining the possibility that that Q team is working to take down the cabal is false. They always assume that the cabal still exists. That's certainly real. That's unquestionably true, and all these evil things are going on. But if QAnon is false, it only means that this evil cabal will stay in power, and there's nobody working to help take them down. So it seems very dark, but in their mindset and their worldview, the sort of the Q entity is a hero who is making the world brighter.
So I guess one final question that I have is we don't know who this Q person or persons is, but I mean, given that some people have taken to violence on this, and that we have reports of people sort of buying into it and either taking bad action or, sort of getting isolated from their families because they have these sort of extreme beliefs. I have received emails from families about their kids saying, I was told about, one family's son who had graduated from college, had everything in front of him, and decided to give up his job in order to move home and become a Q follower. And it was important to him because he knows the world's going to be in a different place very soon, and he needs to help people adapt. So, I mean, does this Q person have any conscience whatsoever with what they're doing? I mean, I hear points, Q has stopped posting, and I'm like, oh, good. But then it keeps coming back.
Of course. The question is like, does this Q person have any conscience whatsoever? And the answer is, I really don't think so. I really think that I can't diagnose someone from because I don't have the qualifications. Even if I did, I couldn't diagnose someone from behind some 8chan posts. But they really do act in a really super callous, sociopathic way. Like, I'll give you an example. Q once pointed to a parody account on Twitter named Satan. This was an account that sort of made jokes in the voice of the devil, basically. And it was run by this 26-year-old British man. And Q pointed the QAnon followers, claiming that the Satan account was actually run by the elites and used to signal sort of to other evil people. And basically there were some sort of big names behind it. And of course, the QAnon community, they wound up doxing and harassing this person who is just a person, just a guy, because Q pointed to them. Now, obviously, Q did not care what happened to this innocent person who was just running a silly little Twitter account. So I think it's pretty clear that this person really only cares about maintaining this cult and feeding them for whatever reason. We think that they might be monetizing this in sort of other ways, through like T-shirts or through live stream donations, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's pretty clear that they really don't care what happens to their own the QAnon believers or anyone else who might be affected by the QAnon community.
Wow.
Do we know what the Trump administration thinks about the whole QAnon group, or if they're even interested in it?
It's interesting. So Sarah Huckabee Sanders, White House press secretary, was once asked after the Florida rally that you mentioned, and her response was super general and vague. And so a reporter asked her, it's like, well, what do you think about these sort of like QAnon groups? And she didn't respond directly. It's like, we've been very consistent. We reject any organization that supports violence and that kind of stuff. But she didn't address it directly. So really, the White House has not answered the question directly. In fact, the QAnon community is very, very eager for any reporter to ask either Trump or Press Secretary Sanders about QAnon. In fact, they want people to ask. They say often, ask the Q on Twitter. The idea is that they want people to ask, who is Q, or do you know Q? They want President Trump to address this question directly, because they feel that after their theory is that after Trump is asked this question, he'll say yes, Q is real, and he'll explain everything. But and that this will be sort of the ultimate validation for them. But as of right now, no, the White House has not really directly addressed QAnon.
Do you ever feel threatened by anybody? You've got a huge Twitter following, and that's kind of how you interact on social media. Are you ever feeling threatened or being watched by anybody?
I did happen to, there's some sort of big sort of QAnon names that sort of debate me. At least they sort of they target me and they take issue with the things I post and things I say. But the answer is no. I've never received any threats or anything that sort of made me feel dangerous. In fact, they've never even yet been able. No one in the QAnon community has yet been able to dox me. They haven't revealed anything about my real name or where I live quite yet. Which is I always thought it was kind of funny. These are sort of the crack researchers that are supposed to be taking down the deep state. They can't even find a guy with a Twitter account. But I really don't feel threatened by them. I know that there certainly have been people who have gone too far, but I really feel like the majority of them really, they think that they can change the world from behind their computer. They don't want to do anything serious themselves.
Yeah. Now, let's give out your, what kind of contact information, or where do you want people to follow or hear what you've got to say?
Sure. If you're interested in QAnon, I track what they believe and what they're doing day to day on my Twitter account, and that's at Travis_View, VIEW, and I also have a podcast called QAnon Anonymous, and you can just type QAnon Anonymous into your favorite podcasting app, and we release an episode every week.
Okay, we'll link that to ours.
Cool.
Now, Joe gets paid by the government. Now, so do you as well? Just because I'm going to get at least 50 emails saying...
Yeah, Al's been telling me about all the hate mail I get, telling me I'm bought and paid for and whatnot.
Yeah, he's obviously paid for. So,
I will say, I do have a day job. I work in marketing, but it is for a company it's for a private company that has no connection to any government or political organization. So I'm free and clear.
Liar.
And you haven't been involved in MK Ultra or anything like that, no?
I have not been MK Ultra quite yet. If that does happen, I'll be sure to update you.
Well, I'm going to get it. So, okay, well, men, let's order some pizza. And there's really good Spirit pizza out there, I hear. I know a shop. Anyway, it's been a great show, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come on and give us some information about it. Thank you very much, Travis View.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
To find out more about our show, guests, or to listen to past shows from our archive, please go to www.houseofmysteryradio.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Well, good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.